So here is part 2 of my historic vacation. So I'm pretty sure that this was a Gatling gun, and I just really think, but sadly the sign to what it was like telling us when it was used and all that was missing. So I had like no idea what it was, but I'm pretty sure it was a Gatling gun. So Fort Moultrie was another fort that I went to, and it was used in the Civil War, the American Revolution, all those. But at this one, I saw muskets being fired, so that was kind of cool. And I'll show those in just a few minutes. So as I said, here is the musket firing.
The rest of your leg and garter. You have, at that winter encampment I discussed in Morristown, and also famously during the Battle of Trenton and Princeton leading up to initial winter encampment in Morristown, far less famous, men leaving bloody footprints through the So that's why, despite the phrase uniform, the Continental Army is never really uniformly dressed, and that's just all a state of a lack of supply of provisions. We rely on so many of these manufactured textiles from Great Britain. Now that we're fighting a revolutionary war, we're having to trade with initially neutral nations and then later allies. Imagine trying to fight a war for independence and you only have so many of these muskets, and what does the musket need to make it function? A couple things. One should be obvious. Gunpowder. We don't have much capacity to make gunpowder in the colonies. And then, what's the ignition device on this gun? Hint, pointing at it. A flint. Not too many flints either. So, really relying on trade in the Caribbean from European nations to get these things to just make our army in the field capable of fighting. Really incredible that we did so well, given all the shortages of supplies. Hand it over to Mike to discuss more in depth on these British Brown Bess guns.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the British Brown Bess smoothbore muzzle loading flintlock musket. And while we're not sure where the nickname Brown Bess came from exactly, we are sure that this was one of the finest firearms ever put into service. It was also one of the longest used firearms in military history. It was introduced in 1722 and did not go out of service until 1838, over 115 years later. It is a 75 caliber barrel and fires a 69 caliber ball. Now you may say, well, why would you fire a 69 caliber ball out of a 75 caliber barrel? It's because of the black powder. The black powder had a very great fouling effect. So if you still wanted to fire, you had to fire a smaller projectile. The important parts of the musket: this is the lock that holds the flint. This is known as the steel or hammer. Beneath it is the pan. We will prime the pan with black powder. We will close the steel and we will cock and then fire. Any scouts here? Any outdoorsmen? What happens when you strike flint against steel? You create a spark, exactly. The spark will ignite the priming charge in the pan. There's a very small hole here that you probably can't see from where you're sitting, called the vent hole. The flame will go down through the vent hole and set off the main charge that we've inserted down the barrel. Now, if that doesn't happen, there can be several reasons for that. Number one, your powder can be wet. Number two, your flint can be bad. And number three, you can have the ignition of the priming charge, but because the vent hole may be clogged, it will not set off the main charge. You've heard the term flash in a pan? That's where it comes from. You'll get the flash in the pan, but you will not get the main charge to go off. So what you will see is that there'll actually be two explosions, one of the priming charge and the other of the main charge. There are 14 steps to firing one of these muskets. Now, we'll go through them slowly to begin with. Obviously, in the heat of the battle, no one was standing there calling out 14 steps. But if you had paid attention to people such as Baron von Steuben, who came from Germany to help drill the American troops, if you had paid very close attention to him, you knew those 14 steps like the back of your hand, and you could do them very rapidly. In fact, if you were good, you could get off 3 rounds a minute. If you were really good, you might get off 4 rounds a minute. It weighs 10.5 pounds. The range, perhaps 100 yards. But let's talk about effective range, probably no more than 50 yards. The British Brown Bess musket.
Thanks, Mike. You mentioned flash in the pan. That's one important part of these flintlock muskets still having meaning for our language, our lexicon. Another one that's a safety function on the Brown Bess, besides the leather hammer stall, which is period accurate. This functions as a safety. If you don't take that off, if the flint hits this leather, it's not going to cause anything to go off. Anybody heard of the phrase, don't go off half-cocked? Yeah. If this was not holding like that, this would fail. This half-cock is the safety mechanism. It's when you pull this back that it's ready to fire. The only element on this musket that isn't entirely accurate, in fact, 0% odds it's accurate, this piece right here, the flash guard. This is just a safety feature for modern historic weapons demonstrators, reenactors. Basically, as Mike said, there are two explosions. First one is in the priming pan. You basically don't want to blind the guy to your right. And we're standing shoulder to shoulder, so it's a nice measure for safety today. A little bit of context in terms of how these weapons were used by armies in the field in South Carolina specifically, and to kind of remind you that it wouldn't be inaccurate for a militiaman to be working closely with the Continental Army. We would likely be in different ranks. I might not be standing shoulder to shoulder with them because they're the ones that stick around on the battlefield for a long time. They're the ones that can withstand a bayonet charge. They're the ones that are going to keep drilling, reloading, firing at the advancing British soldiers. When Major General Nathaniel Greene comes down here to South Carolina after twin disastrous defeats. First, the surrender of Charleston, May 1780, 5,000 Continental Army soldiers surrendering. Greatest defeat of the Revolution, really what pours the British efforts then into the South, full tilt. You have then the defeat at Camden. If you try to visit any battlefield there's basically just a marker on the side of a highway. We've got big national parks that are victories, not so much our big defeats. So later, Major Nathaniel Greene takes control of the Continental Army, and he collaborates very effectively with famous South Carolina militia generals, most notably Francis Marion, Andrew Pickens. These men would be present on the battlefield with Major General Nathaniel Greene at the Battle of Eutaw Springs, not too long before the Battle of Yorktown, the far more famous battle. You'd have frequently the militia relied on as kind of shock troops, advance lines. You see this also at the Battle of Cowpens in the upstate, another Patriot victory, probably one of the most decisive battlefield victories, a double envelopment. We entirely encircle the British and Scottish Highlanders. And then also Battle of Guilford Courthouse. Basically, they know the militia wants to help. They're brave men up to a certain point. They're given the task of hurting the British Army as they're marching along the battlefield. So imagine a line of militia, their task, try to get off 2 shots, and then retreat, fall back to the second line. Do it again. There are more militia there waiting for you. There are 3 lines of that at Guilford Courthouse. So that's how militia, like myself, could help the Continental Army. I wouldn't necessarily be standing there mounting a bayonet and charging a British soldier. That takes some severe discipline, and usually when it comes down to a bayonet charge, that's usually deciding the outcome of a battle. 18th century armies, their tactics are different from 19th century armies. Far lower casualty figures. They're retreating instead of getting annihilated in those kinds of late stages of a battle, especially when the bayonets are being drawn. So as Mike mentioned, we'll drill slowly first just to give you an idea of the complexity of the process, and I'll remind you again at the take aim command that it will be followed hopefully by a loud boom, so cover your ears if you're sensitive to that, and then we'll drill a little bit quicker, skip some of the steps with the prime and load command, which takes care of a lot of the loading of the gun. Alright, fingers crossed for no misfire. Shoulder, fire left. Cover, fire left. Open, hand. Handle, cartridge. And obviously in the Revolutionary War, the cartridge would have a lead ball, a projectile at the bottom of it. We're firing blanks, so it's just powder. Charge with cartridge. Prime. Shut, hand. Charge with cartridge. Hammer. Shoulder, firelock. Poise, firelock. Cock, firelock. Take aim. This is when you want to cover your ears. Fire. Cover.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, so we had 2 go off, 1 failed. You don't have any priming powder. You don't want to throw it down. No. You can prime again. Did you hear if this went off? I didn't see it go off. Okay.
What you think of that?
Thought it would be much louder.
Be a little bit louder if you're shooting a projectile.
Yep. Clearing misfire. Take aim. Fire. You're not talking. There we go. So we'll just speed it up a little bit, and then we'll be around for questions, and we can reopen this side of the fort. Shoulder, firelock. Recover, firelock. Prime and load. Shoulder, firelock. Poise, firelock. Cock, firelock. Take aim. Again, loud noise coming. Fire! Misfire. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Hopefully the enemy is advancing very slowly.
I mean, they would be doing field maintenance on their gun as they're going, especially on a humid day. You'd have to be pricking out that vent hole pretty quick, often. All right, clearing misfire. Take aim, fire.
Huzzah!
Yeah. Must have been a plugged vent hole. Only option. Flints are all working. So, in the 18th century, as Mike said, 3 cheers went a little bit differently. So let's give 3 cheers to these wonderful volunteers. Hip hip! Huzzah! Hip hip! Hip hip! Huzzah! All right, I'm still hearing hoorays, but you'll get it right next time. Huzzah! No worries. Enjoy the rest of your visit here at Fort Moultrie. Take care.
Thank you.
Yep.
But before I go, I just want to show you a GIF of the shooting that I made.